And if they're not going to pursue you in dating, then they're not going to pursue you in marriage. And if they don't have to work to get you, they're not going to work to keep you. What, Vivis?
You always kiss me when you have stuff on your lips.
Vivis, I need a little lip gloss.
Hi guys, welcome back to our channel.
Welcome back to the channel. It's good to see you. Nice to see you. Hope you're doing well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Y'all, today is part 3 of the boundary series, and this was requested by you guys. You wanted very specific questions answered about boundaries. So
We're about to get
y'all
real specific
asked,
up in here.
and we're about to talk about it.
You're going to receive.
Any little house updates before we get started?
I don't know. I guess I'll just say, just as a reminder, Tori and I are not the authorities on these topics, but we do feel really encouraged to talk about them based off of our own experiences, based off of what we've learned through other people. And so we want to give this information to you in a way that is really edifying to you, but we also we don't know you, we don't know your unique circumstance. And so with that said, you do really need to apply the stuff we're saying through a litmus test of like, will this work in my life with my lifestyle? Now, some things are just black and white, certain boundaries, but other things, it's a little different. So we just encourage you just to listen to it through the lens of your own,
Context.
Yeah, through your own context. So
Yeah. All right. Let's just hop on into it.
let's just hop into it.
All right, babe. This one's for you. First question is it sinful to touch their butt while kissing?
Is it sinful? That's like the 280th commandment. Thou shalt not touch butt while kissing. This is going to get real weird real quick. I'm not a fan of the girl touching my butt. Let's just be clear about that. Under my own doctrine, yes. If it's something that causes you to lust after someone in your own heart, then yes, it's a sin.
I would personally say if you're just dating, you're not married, and it's going to cause you to lust after that person, have very sexual thoughts, I would say it's a no-go.
It's a no for me, dog.
It's a no for me, dog. A question that we got in like a million different little ways. In our first boundaries video, we talked about how there needs to be some spiritual boundaries in terms of when you are dating a person. And so a lot of people ask, like, did we do devotionals together? Did we study the Bible together? Did we pray together? Like, what were our personal boundaries when it came to our spiritual walks together? And that was something that we had to walk through because I had a different view than Chad did, and then he explained why and his reasoning behind it, and it made a lot of sense to me. And so maybe that's something you can kind of like explain on a deeper level of why we had those boundaries.
Yeah.
And now that I'm married, I'm so glad we did.
Yeah.
So I'll preface with that.
I think it's so important to have spiritual boundaries because it's something so sacred to protect. And it's not that I didn't want to study the Bible with Tori or pray with Tori or do devotionals with Tori or anything. It's not that I didn't want that. And we did do different things where we were encouraging each other spiritually. But I think the big difference that you want to clue into is that she's not my spiritual accountability and she's not my spiritual authority, and the same vice versa. I'm not her spiritual authority. I'm not her spiritual accountability, because there's women for that for her. And I think that couples who are not married can try to live like a married couple, and I think that's unhealthy because you're getting the fruit of marriage without the protection of marriage. My point is that if you go too fast, too deep with somebody, it can really confuse you. It confuse your heart to where you may not be able to see who this person truly is, or you may depend on them for your relationship with God, which is unhealthy. So there's a handful of things of why we just encourage taking it slow. So we're not saying don't pray with them, but we're saying don't pray as one.
And it's not that we like never ever prayed together either, but that was like the biggest point is like we're not praying necessarily as one underneath God. We pray over things. We would be in like group prayers together, and we would talk about the word, and we would talk about our faith, and that's like something so vital and so important to us. And so it's not that we were like, don't talk about any of that. Like that's the opposite of what we were saying. It's just not praying as a united front. But
Yeah.
just be cautious.
It's the same aspect of just, so just think about how you'd pray with a friend. It's just like that. It's like you can totally do that. That's not weird. But when you start praying intimately together as a couple for your shared vision, it just can start to intertwine too much, and it can really confuse some hearts and souls.
Yeah. Next question. A good way to explain why to not kiss random people just for fun. There's this narrative that goes around that physicality is just physical, and it's so not that. There's an emotional attachment that happens. There's a spiritual attachment that happens when there's like physical touch between people. And so making sure that you're protecting your heart and theirs, because we as children of God, like we're supposed to care about the other person's heart as well. It's not just this selfish, like, oh, it's fun and it feels good and it makes me feel affirmed. It's a very selfish way of thinking. And so you have to remember that by like being physical with someone, now they can catch feels for you too. And you have to make sure that you're protecting your brother and sister in Christ and leading them closer to the cross, because if you're just doing that for fun, that's not leading them to Jesus. And so,
I agree with you. I guess I would just encourage you to really think about, okay, like, why would you ever just want to kiss random people for fun?
Yeah.
And I think in this book that we read called The Meaning of Marriage, it talks about how involved your ego can be in pursuing somebody else. Because basically, if you are just pursuing random people and you don't care how they treat your heart, then what you're basically telling yourself is like, oh, I'm just focused on the physical. I'm just focused on getting this person interested in me, and oh, I got them. And it's an ego trip. It's literally your brain playing tricks on you to make you think that you want this and you need this, but in actuality, it's unhealthy.
Yeah.
Like, would you ever just take, I don't know, like 10 grand and just go give it to a random stranger and say, hey, trust you with it? Probably not. Yeah, you probably wouldn't, because you want to protect the things that are meaningful and close to you. And so being intimate with somebody else should also be protected.
Yeah. Gotta honor yourself, girl, boy, whoever be listening. This is a great one. How do you set boundaries with parents when you're new in marriage? And that's just a little teaser, because we're gonna actually have an entire video on boundaries in marriage and boundaries with family and friends. And so stay tuned for the answer to that question.
Yeah.
Okay. How to know when to pursue a guy. Should I always wait for him to start the pursuit? Oh, girl. You gotta wait. You gotta wait. I know that I'm probably gonna get a lot of backlash from that, but if you watched our recent video, you need to be so hidden because you're meant to be discovered. For me, I wanna be pursued. And if they're not gonna pursue you in dating, then they're not gonna pursue you in marriage. And if they don't have to work to get you, they're not gonna work to keep you. And so you have to know your worth and know that you're valuable enough to be pursued. And it's not that you can't let them know that you're interested, like, because there's a lot of girls who are like, a guy says something and they're so closed off that the guy kind of gets the hint that, oh, well, they're not interested, and they move on. And so I'm not saying don't let them know you're interested if they kind of are giving you little hints here and there.
Yeah. This may sound a little harsh, and I don't mean it that way at all. It's absolutely not that way, but it's going to sound very direct. People are smart, and if you're dropping little hints, to basically let this guy know, or if you're a guy, if you're letting a girl know that you're interested, and they're not responding, then I wouldn't pursue it any further, because they're telling you how they feel about you and the way that they're responding to your advances. And so I would just encourage you to really take the hint, because if someone really wants to be with you, they'll be with you.
What are your thoughts on sleeping over and in the same bed while we're both waiting for marriage?
That would be a no.
That's a no.
The reason we're saying no is because you just have to know where temptation is. And if you give the enemy an inch, that's where he'll get a foothold. And there's a verse in the Bible that's like, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought. And it doesn't mean that you couldn't avoid the temptation, but just put yourself in a position that you're not even tempted. It says run, it says flee. That means literally run away from the temptation. And so I know that there's certain circumstances and different contexts to that question. But as an overarching rule, I would say it's just not a good idea. And this is coming from people who, we did take a trip together, we did stay in the same bed, and that was when we like slipped into temptation. And so it's literally coming from a place where we're like, probably not a good idea.
Yeah.
It's not from like, oh, we did everything perfectly. We didn't. And so we're talking from a place of, if we could go back, that's a boundary we would have 100% had.
Yeah. So there's this movie that Tori and I talk about a lot. It's called The War Room. And a lot of what the movie talks about is having a strategy against an enemy. So for example, if you were to go to war with another country or whoever, you know, you're not just gonna like be like hoping for the best and just run out there. You know, you're gonna have an actual strategy to help your side have victory. And so that's not to say that you can't run out there and have victory. That's not to say that you can't just be in the same bed and have victory. But why would you ever want to run into a situation without being well equipped with a good strategy to have victory? You know, we're not saying that people can't do that, but what we are saying is like, definitely play it smart. There's nothing wrong with playing the long game because, you know, Lord willing, Tori and I will be married for 60, 70, you know, it could be 80 years, who knows? But the thing is I get to sleep next to her every day once we're married. Yeah. And that's so special. Yeah. And so what's nice is we have that many years of sleeping next to each other, and right now there's probably no need to rush it. And honestly, the more time that you focus on just growing emotionally together, the quicker
you'll get married.
The quicker you'll get married. And so, yeah.
I always say this, and I think I said it in another boundaries video, but you don't want to feel like you're on an audition to be their wife. So don't give them the benefits that they would get if they put a ring on it without a ring on it, you know? And so you want to have the protection under God and not be acting in a way that like they don't need to close the deal. You know, they don't need to commit. You know, they don't need to have that door cracked. You know, you want the door closed, you want protection, you want commitment, and then you're gonna feel safer inside of that relationship too. So it's all for your good. Like, once again, reiterating, boundaries are not like this strict set of rules that are going to keep you in bondage. There's something that is going to set you free. And something that I said in like a Talks with Tori on Instagram was, I'm reading this book called A Severe Mercy, and it is so good. And he was talking about this analogy, and I'll try to keep it brief, but I really think it's good for this series. He was saying that he had this dog and they lived on a big property, like lots of land, and he would let his dog roam free and he'd run around because he knew who his master was. And so when he said, come, the dog would come. But then one day out of the blue, there was a rabbit running by, and when he said come, the dog paused and didn't come and debated, am I going to go to my master? Am I going to have my freedom and chase this rabbit like I want to do? And he went and chased the rabbit. And the master went home because the dog knows where home is. And so hours later, the dog comes home and guilt came into this little dog's life. And the dog, instead of coming to his master with tail wagging, so excited to get the rubs and the cuddles, instead sulkingly just went to its little bed. And it's crazy because that little dog felt that guilt. And then the next day, same thing happens, running around free. And this time the dog never came home. The master said, come, and decided to, chase the rabbit, and then never came home. And now it's like, okay, that dog has its freedom, but it doesn't have the protection. It doesn't have a roof over its head. It doesn't get the cuddles and the love and the food. And for generations to come, if that dog has babies, they don't have it either. And so it really shows that there is a freedom inside of boundaries and rules, because had he known his master and obeyed, he could have came home to love and protection and joy, but instead he could be sleeping in the rain. So I just love that analogy.
Cold, hard rain.
I just love that analogy. Okay, there's another question that says how to get over the shame from boundaries you've crossed in the past. And we do a lot of talking about that, and like getting past your past video. We'll link it up here, but it has all to do with shame. It's something that I really had to walk through. very, very passionate about. And so instead of answering that question, I encourage you to watch that video because we have an entire video.
Is it up here?
It's up there somewhere.
I think it's up here. I think something that I think we should definitely talk about, which she probably got this question over 100 times, is having boundaries with the opposite sex. Mm-hmm. Because I think Tori gets a handful of messages every single day saying, hey, I want more from this relationship, or the girl messages you and says, hey, like, how do I, let
be
this guy
friends with someone that I have a crush on?
Yeah. And so I think that's a really important one, because that's what so many people want to know. And I just want to start off by saying that Tori and I totally believe that you can be friends with the opposite sex. So whenever you hear us talk about setting good boundaries between that, just hear us now when I say that you can totally be friends with them. Mm-hmm. But how close of friends, and also the situations that you find yourself in, like hanging out, I think they look very different than what maybe the world shows.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things where it's like, it differs depending on context, because if you're trying to be close with a person who is of the opposite sex and you're in a relationship or they're in a relationship, those boundaries might look different than if you're both single. You know what I mean? And so I got a lot of questions about, okay, what are my boundaries with this person that I have a crush on, but they're in a relationship? And so I think something for you to have is you have to protect your heart. Like, you have to protect your heart. And so being around someone who is in another relationship is just not smart for your heart. Because I feel like the more you communicate with them, the more you talk with them, the more your feelings are going to grow. And then you're going to be in a place of hurt because they're committed elsewhere. And so I would just say slowly taking a step back, respecting them, respecting their relationship is really important.
Yeah. Think about you're dating somebody and then some girl likes the person you're dating, or some guy likes the person you're dating. Would you want them hanging out one-on-one? Probably not. I mean, it's you probably make you a little uncomfortable to know that this person actually would like to be with that person. Yeah. And also, even if you guys are both single, I think it's important just to think about this is like there's a likelihood that one of you will end up in a serious relationship, if not both, but just say one of you does. And so, is that person's spouse going to feel comfortable with that person talking to you about details about their relationship? Because right now you may be super close and you're single and you share everything with each other. But as it grows further, I just know, like Tori's never expressed this to me, but I just know better. I'm not going to go intimately confide in another woman about my relationship with my wife. That's just unhealthy.
Yeah. How long did y'all wait to kiss?
Third date?
Was it? No. Well, back in 2014.
Yeah.
But like when we actually started dating, you waited forever to kiss me.
I waited months. So, and let that be a lesson, because again, we want to reiterate this to you all. We're speaking from our own experience. And so whenever we first started talking in 2014, we kissed right off the bat, and then things broke away. And then I was upset because I caught feelings. I wasn't like mad at her, but I was just upset. You know what I mean? Because I thought something was happening and it wasn't. But fast forward, 4 years or however long that was, whenever we were coming back into talking and in a relationship, I waited months before I even kissed her. Yeah. And the reason was because I knew how bad it hurts whenever you get your hopes up about somebody, and how easy it is to fall into just like physical only. And I was like, I want to get to know her heart before her body. And so for me, that was just really important.
I like that.
Bebas. You don't have to put that in there.
Okay, if you're single, is it okay to flirt with multiple people?
I would say no.
I would not suggest it.
Yeah, I wouldn't suggest it either. And I would never say that you can't carry conversations and different things like that, but when it comes to flirting, if you're just kind of marketing yourself, putting yourself out there, I mean, there's a reason why Rolls-Royce doesn't have commercials on TV, because people know their value and they don't need to just like flaunt it all and just like, hey, this is what I have to offer.
Yeah. To my ladies out there, you do not need every guy to want you, you need the right guy to want you. You know, you want the attention from the guy who values you, who sees you as a daughter of the king, who sees you as worth it, who wants to pursue you for more than your body. And so, yeah, I mean, I would not suggest flirting with multiple people. I would say run after the Lord. And when you start running and you see someone beside you running after him too, then that's something to be like, oh, who's this guy? You know? Okay, so we got this question in a lot of different forms, but it's how to stop having feelings for someone.
Time. I think time really is something that helps a lot. But also I think making good decisions in terms of protecting your heart, in a sense that, you know, imagine you're dating someone, you had a bad breakup, and like, should you still be following that person on social media? No. Like, there's no reason to. It's like, oh, but I get along with their family, or, oh, I wish them the best. It's like, no, there's no point. Like, there's like, you can justify it all you want. It will be more healthy for you to not see it. That way your heart can take time to heal. Because think about it. Imagine you scrape your arm. Do you just say, oh, it'll be fine? Like, no, like, you put a Band-Aid on it, or you go to the doctor, you put something on it, and it takes a week or two to heal. And it shows that wounds take time to heal. And so I would encourage you to do what's necessary, to have parameters in place. Or even, like, for example, me, whenever I was trying to get over one of my exes, I had friends that I would text whenever I was like wanting to reach out to her or wanting to go check Instagram, all this stuff. And so, you know, I had like blockades in place that really helped me, because the longer you can go without feeling that trigger of sadness, the more, you know, because if you have a scrape and you're constantly poking it or scratching it, you're going to make it worse. And so I do think that allowing something to heal is really important, and giving it the space it needs. And so that's not to say you can't have well wishes for that person. You can just have well wishes from afar. Yeah, it really matters where you run during a heartbreak. And we have a video on that, on how to deal with heartbreak. It'll be up here.
Speaking of, what do you do when you can't find accountability partners to help you with purity?
Oh, man.
I would say make sure that you're involved in a church. Like, get plugged in, join a small group, try to have coffee with the pastor or pastor's wife, depending on if you're a girl or a guy. Getting plugged into community is so important, and then you will like automatically have those people that you can reach out to. And so we get a lot of questions about that too. Like, how do I create godly community? And we're so blessed with community in our lives.
We are.
But we've also been plugged into so many different churches because we've lived in so many different areas and so many different cities. And so that's like first step for me is like, get involved in a church. You're going to meet people who love Jesus, and those are the people who are going to care about your spiritual growth. And so next question, how about changing in front of each other?
Changing spiritually? Don't do it.
Don't
do
change
it.
Clothes in front of each other if you're not married.
There was another question that someone had asked about, the person had asked about how do you set boundaries if, like, say nudity pops up on TV. Oh my gosh, you can't watch anything without there being crazy language, crazy nudity, crazy everything. And so one thing that a friend of mine gave me advice on, he said he would just fast forward through those parts. And my first thought is like, dang, what if I miss something good? But he was like, it's more important for my wife to feel protected than it is for me to catch a moment. And so there's times where Tori will, I'll just look away or I'll fast forward. It's kind of one or the other. And so the same thing with changing in front of each other.
I literally think of the little monkey emojis where it's like, it's like, protect yourself. This is for you and for the person that you care about. If you're in a relationship and you're like, can I change in front of him? That's not loving to him, because that's going to put him in a place of lustful thoughts. And that's on you, girl. That's on you. Just saying. How do you recommit to boundaries while still in the same relationship where the boundaries have been broken? And I definitely suggest watching that Getting Past Your Past video, because we talked about that as well, about what do you do once you've already crossed the line and you want to go back to the starting point. And it doesn't mean that it's not hard to do that, but it is so worth it. And walking through shame, that's a part of that video too. And so we'll have those videos linked below, or you can, tap up here.
I would say congrats on wanting to make a change, because Tori and I were there and we had to redevelop different boundaries based off of situations that we found ourselves in.
Yeah.
It's almost just kind of like, you touch the stove, you see it's hot, and like, okay, now I know not to do that. And so a lot of our relationship was that. Mm-hmm. And so we encourage you, this is not a bad thing that you want to switch things up. This is a good thing. And at the very end of our videos, we always put these 3 little text boxes that have some type of random wording in it. And one time it said, your past is only your past if you move on from it and learn from it. Otherwise, it's your long-suffering present. Mm-hmm. And what that means is that your past can only be your past when you turn away from it and you say, oh, I see what was there, and now I'm going to make decisions moving forward.
Yeah.
And so that's a great thing. And honestly, it'll make your relationship so much stronger because guess what? You're practicing conflict-solving situations. Mm-hmm. You're practicing solving problems. You're practicing dealing with conflict. And you're making a decision that's better for both of you. Yeah. And I can't think of much that would be better for your relationship than to practice that because every day Tori and I have to make decisions. We have to handle conflict. We have to solve problems together. And this is just an example of how you guys can practice that.
Love that. How to not feel envious of other engagements or marriage when you're still dating. And I feel like this applies to whether you're single and you want to be in a relationship, or you're in a relationship then you want to be engaged, and then you're engaged and you just want to be married, and then you're married and you just want to have babies. Like, there's always going to be something. And envy and comparison, it is the thief of your joy, and it doesn't allow you to be present in the moment. And so you really need to give that over to God and be like, Lord, what am I supposed to be learning in this season? I'm literally thinking of this because my friend Julie came out with this little sweatshirt and it says, keep watering. But sometimes you're literally planted in the ground because you're supposed to blossom in the next season. And so you're looking at your season of like, wow, I'm literally in the ground, I'm hidden, like nothing's happening, but really that's where the bulk of the nourishment is happening so that you can grow and you can blossom. And so instead of you comparing your seed phase to someone else's like full bloom, you have to be like, Lord, what are you doing here in my life that I can learn so that I can really be thriving in the next season, or thriving right now while I'm still planted, you know?
On the other side of that spectrum, I would encourage you that, say if you are in a relationship and you're wanting to be engaged and you see other people getting engaged while you're not, I would encourage you just to really have an open conversation. I remember Tori and I had this conversation, and remember, we cannot stress you enough that this may be awkward, but it's so important because right now you're probably, every day that goes on, you're probably getting more and more upset, and that's not a good thing because if you are dating somebody, you might project that upsetness on somebody or the person you're dating. And so I asked Tori, I was like, hey, so what's your timeline? And she said this to me verbatim. She said, I'm not trying to wait around. And so for me, that knew that, okay, this is a lot faster than maybe a normal relationship. And that was okay with me. But you cannot expect what you do not express. And so I would encourage you to have really healthy conversations, but don't give ultimatums like, well, if you don't put a ring on it, I'm going to leave you. Not that you would do that.
It's not helpful.
Yeah, it's just, I think having really constructive conversations, because there may be a reason why they haven't proposed. And we always want to assume the best of each other, but that doesn't mean that we can't express how we're feeling. So just try to do it in a very healthy circumstance.
Yeah, that's good.
So for the last question, I think we should just choose this one. The question is how do you stick to your boundaries? It's like, okay, number one, what are boundaries? Number two, why should I have them? Number three, okay, what are they? Like what boundaries should I? And then number four would be, obviously, how do I actually stick to them? How do I practice them?
Yeah.
And so before Tori jumps into this question, I just wanted to say that we know everyone's life looks different. And so we encourage you that if we didn't speak about your specific situation, apply some of the same philosophy that we're talking about here. If philosophy makes it sound really deep, I don't mean it that way, but the same thought behind it, which is like, okay, well, I'm dating, I'm not looking for single person boundaries, or, oh, I'm engaged, so I'm not looking for this. It's like, you can still apply really good boundaries even if we didn't talk about them. And so what advice would you have for people who are looking to stick to whatever boundary they may have?
Yeah. First and foremost, I would really encourage you to remember that it's for your own good, because I feel like when you think boundaries are something that's keeping you from something, it's going to be more tempting to actually cross them. It's kind of like, don't touch the stove, but the kid like touches it anyway, right? It's like remembering that it's for your benefit and for the benefit of your relationship. And then 2, get accountability. I remember when we were dating, my mentor Erin, she would check in. Like I knew that she was gonna check in right when Chad left town. And so it's like having that person that you trust, and you trust the fruit in their life, to give you guidance and to make sure that they're going to ask you the questions that maybe you're not going to want to answer, is really, really important. Because there were definitely times where I felt tempted with Chad, and I literally had the thought, like, Aaron's totally going to ask me about this, and I do not feel like having that conversation, and it would help me pivot. And then 2, conviction is a good thing, and there's blessing in confiding in God and asking for forgiveness. And so if you're struggling with boundaries that have already been broken in the past, confiding in God, and in confession there is blessing, in confession there is healing. And so like laying that at the feet of Jesus and being like, help me, and daily being like, Lord, I need your help in staying firm and knowing that this is what you have for me, is really important. Like without the Holy Spirit, there is no way we would have not had sex before marriage. Like genuinely, praise the Lord for the Holy Spirit.
So the few things I would say, look at this hair right now.
What's wrong with that?
It looks crazy. It looks like it's like perfectly coiffed. So the few things that I would say would be, number 1 is like to understand what willpower is. Willpower is like a muscle where the more you flex it, the stronger it gets. But right now, if these are new boundaries for you, they may not be the easiest things for you to flex and hold on to super strong to keep your boundaries. And so the first thing I would do is make it as easy as possible for you to have boundaries. So for example, if you have a boundary or a goal, say, of waking up at 6 a.m. every day, if you put your alarm clock right next to your bed, there's a big chance you're going to reach over and turn it off. We do that all the time. Yeah. But if you were to set your alarm clock in your bathroom or your phone in your bathroom and it goes off, now you're forced to get up, and it gives you more of a chance to stick with your boundary. Mm-hmm. And so we would encourage you to make it as easy on yourself as possible. And so what that means is that if you think this friendship is getting a little flirty where someone's catching feelings and you don't want to have feelings, then you don't need to continue that friendship. And not trying to be mean, but it's like make it as easy as possible. And so if you're looking at trying to rediscover some physical boundaries for you and someone you're dating, not being alone past like 9 p.m. together in the same room, it could be a great boundary for you. It's just don't even tempt yourself with it. Make it as easy as possible for you to stick to your boundaries. Yeah. And so that's what I'm a big fan of, is because a lot of people, it's like the whole New Year's resolutions mentality. It's like, new year, new me. I'm going to wake up at 6. I'm going to drink 8 cups of water. I'm going to work out twice a day. Yeah. Like, no, you're not, because you didn't do it all last year. Yeah. And so now you're trying to develop all these really hard to keep habits, and all of a sudden you can keep them starting January 1st. No, start small. Yeah. Start safe and work smart. So. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when you start small too, you develop this like small sense of, oh, I can achieve that. And then, oh, I can achieve that. But if you set these like crazy lofty goals and then you're just going to feel defeated, it's not going to give you the encouragement to keep going. And so I agree.
Yeah. See that woodpecker outside? See it with the black head and the white neck?
Yeah, a little cutie.
Yeah. I think that's it.
Is that it?
That's the boundary Q&A. We know that people really like these videos because it gives some personal touch to the other videos that we do. So yeah.
We hope it was encouraging, you guys. If you feel like there's anyone that would also be encouraged, please feel free to share it. You guys are the best. We try to read all your comments, and like we've said before, I feel like you guys encourage us more than we encourage you. So we're just
so much more.
Very, very blessed by each and every one of you. And so hope you know that. Hope you feel very loved by us, because you are. And we'll see you in the next video.
Wednesday. Bye-bye.
Bye.